Hello, we're live.
Hello, hello.
Okay, so we're live on Facebook and we're live on my YouTube channel. So just a shout out to everybody if you want to put your name in the comments. And of course, if you have questions as we go along, feel free to ask your questions. This is why we have this live, to provide you some value. And of course, to talk about a topic that's going to be, I believe, and that's my personal belief, that's going to be the hot topic of these coming years, blockchain. It's a completely revolutionary, in my view, model. So we have an expert in Geneva. I've known him for a while because I did go to the events. I was interested. I think a couple of years ago, right? I came to the events. Yeah, I started going because I was interested in the technology. I wanted to see how it works. It's very technical, but still I was interested. And I thought, who could I invite to talk about the topic? Well, that's it, and you're going to explain this during the live today, how you became this point of contact and identified as the expert in Geneva, and actually broader than this, probably, than Geneva. So why don't we get started with you introducing yourself, your career, and maybe what brought you to create now this organization of yours called C Layer.
So thanks a lot, Isabel, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to come and explain my career, my past, and how it drives today my path. So I'm Cyril Lapinte. I'm an IT engineer. I've already 15 years of experience, so quite a lot writing software, mostly writing software. I've worked in different large organizations in the beginning of my career as a developer, telecom, e-government, and finally I went in financial industry, where I had the opportunity to play around with what blockchain is and to have fun with it. At the beginning, it was a hobby. Then my company, which was the stock exchange of the Swiss Stock Exchange, organized a hackathon. Naively, I went there for a weekend and I played with some blockchain and some codes, and I ended up surprisingly winning the hackathon, which for me was a driver that's I should invest more time and I should maybe explore more what is happening in this space. And that's how I became host of a meetup in Geneva, which is Blockchain Meetup Switzerland, which is the biggest meetup in Switzerland about blockchain. And that's my career completely changed from that point. So I was not anymore driven by the corporate career progress path, but I was more driven by opportunities, things that can be done, and without. So at that point, I was not really interested to make money necessarily. I was more interested to build stuff, to do stuff, to be empowered, to have to be removed from these corporate constraints, which when you want to innovate, when you want to go further, might slow you down or might block you. So I was just more a land of freedom, a land of opportunities that attracted me initially. That's where I met, and the funny thing that the meetup was organized in an incubator at that time. So, I mean, in a place where you have a lot of startups, where you meet a lot of freelancer. So it was also an opportunity for me to discuss with these people and to start the journey of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and I think that's very interesting. And we talked a little bit about that before the live, about how the fact that you created these communities really help you become this magnetic person or the go-to person. I like to talk about becoming the go-to person. So people say, how do I become this type of individual? And really, I think that's what you did with building those communities where people identified you as an event organizer. So what are some of the few tips you could give to people who are maybe passionate about a topic, and maybe they, just like you, they had a corporate career, so they have a background and they have a lot of knowledge? What would be some of the few things they could do to start, building something? Because I really believe in building, and that's how you become someone that people notice. So where could they start? Really very small.
So I think you're completely right. You really know stuff when you do it. But I think that's one of my motto. You have to do things to really understand them. And then the second important point is to really know or really understand something. You have to explain it to someone else. So first you have to do things, and then you have to be able to explain it. And I said, not being really able to, you have to do it. You have to commit on doing it. It's completely different if you don't have an audience and a public, if you have not. So you really need these two steps and two process. You have to put yourself out your comfort zone, to commit on explaining something you learn to others. The second point I want to also discuss about is that you never build something out of nothing. So you always build on the shoulder of the giants. So you always build something on top of others. So as I said, I didn't build what you say, Isabelle, is that you may have give the illusion that I started from nothing and I built the community out of nothing, and I just, I'm magical here, the community. So the real story that I joined, as I just said just before, I initially joined an existing group, which was the biggest of Switzerland, but I didn't have a host in the western part of Switzerland. So it was an opportunity for me to join in and represent this group, this association in the western Switzerland. And that's where I learned how to do meetups. I didn't mention, but I also organized conference in London about agility and agile methodology in general. Where I don't really organize here as well, I'm more observing friends which is doing it, and I'm helping it with any administrative or during the events, with doing the attendance, helping the guests and everything. So I'm more observing others, both in terms of organization with Blockchain Switzerland, and also in how do you operate a meetup, how do you operate a conference. And so what I'm saying here is that first, I join others, observe and learn from them to be able to understand and in the second time, reproduce it myself. So after some time doing it, I was confident enough that there was no meetup for tech for developer. I mean, for real tech and blockchain, there was no meetup at all. That's how I created my first, let's say, self-made events, which is DevSham, because I have all this background already, and then it just follow flow.
Hello, I see Mariam just joined. Hello, Isabelle. This is the first time that I hear the term blockchain. Well, this is going to be very educational, I think, tonight. So maybe we should get started there.
Yeah.
What is the definition? What is blockchain?
So blockchain, it's what we call Internet 3.0, Web 3.0. So there's different ways to see it, to explain it. I think you may be familiar, maybe you heard the term Bitcoin.
Yes.
You certainly heard the term Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is a digital money, but it's very specific compared to a lot of other money, other way to manage wealth, in that it's fully decentralized. So this is a typical example of blockchain. It's Bitcoin, it's digital money, where you have a ledger where you can see the balance. So like an Excel sheet where you see the balance of all the participants. And every participant also owns the copy of the ledger. So everyone has the same information. And when you want to transfer some money to someone else, you inform all the participants individually that you did transfer that amount of money to the other person. So it takes some time. It's a bit complex in terms of governance and everything. But blockchain allows decentralized organization, fully decentralized organization, to manage transaction and to manage operations. So now blockchain referred to the technology in general, because we spoke about governance of money here, but you have other concern, like you can think of supply chain, for example, where you want to have traceability of foods or what are the components of a car. You want to retrace all the history. And then you can use a blockchain to get a consolidated view. So every participant can have his own copy and can verify that what is done correctly. This is very resilient, because if someone were to cheat and modify in his own Excel sheet the balance of one or the other, then he will have to tell to every one of the participants that he did it, and all the participants will be able to say, this is strange. This doesn't fit. You try to spend my money that you have had, or this is not your money. You can't spend someone else's money. Then all the network participants act as the resistance to not authorized modifications. If you compare that to the traditional website or traditional, like your e-banking, in the e-banking, the bank potentially can do a lot of things, and you have no way to prove it. You may have your account's history on paper, and you can go to the bank and say, oh, this doesn't fit with what I had before and everything. But it's complex to prove. You might need lawyers. It might be might takes a lot of time, cost you a lot of money. Here it's immediate, because you can see what all the participants agreed on, what is the current truth. The blockchain mostly, I don't know if I was clear enough. The blockchain is the technology that make it possible.
Yeah, basically, no one can just enter and change, modify something of their own. It's really basically peer-to-peer, and that's why payments would be made so much easier when you talk about the crypto money, because you can immediately just send money, etc. So there's no complexity.
I would say more, not necessarily payments in like your bakery, your bread or things like that, but much more the payment, the international payments, where you have a lot of intermediary banks. Right now, true story, right now, I'm working with Revolut, which is somewhat a modern bank, and I'm unable to transfer money from Switzerland to Revolut, because you have several banks in between. In particular, you have UBS, who, how to say it, who either do it on purpose or just very bad at executing the transaction, but somehow they try to modify the message so it never reach Revolut. So it's no way to prove it. The sender is not with UBS, I'm with Revolut. So we're using two different banks which communicate through other banks, and in between you have UBS. And how do you challenge UBS that they're not doing the job? How do you challenge UBS to change, or what you can do? Basically, you can't even do it as individual. Even banks themselves has problem, because UBS is a competitor, and UBS has no interest to facilitate transfer between banks. So the international transfer is a huge pain in that regards. Another area where you can have a lot of improvements is in developing countries, because right now in our country we have quite a good governance, not so much corruptions, but in developing country you have a lot of corruptions, and blockchain is very resilient to corruption, because even if it happens, can always happen. If someone put a gun on your heads, you might give them money, fine, but you will have the transparency, and you say, oh, this is strange, this guy is receiving a lot of money every month from always the same person. Oh, but it appears this is a company that may have interest to give money to the politician. So that's somewhere where you have a lot of improvement as well. And there is finally a last place in finance where there is a lot of improvement to be made. This is the topic I'm working on, is on financial products, investment and financial products. I do believe that society is not working efficiently today. So our society is not working efficiently because we still have control over our politician through election, but we don't have control over the finance of the society, which is self-managed by the bankers, which has no accountability to be made to either the politician would want their project to be made and need to compose with the bankers, or us as individual with regard to this governance of the money of the society. And I do believe that if you put all this investment into a blockchain, then everyone can maybe participate. So obviously with few 100 francs or less or something like that, you're not going to change a lot, but maybe a lot of small participant can make an impact on the larger scale. And also because the large corporation, large bank, they can be audited, and we can challenge them on the way they give money, accept projects, finance projects, and everything that's related to that concern. So maybe I will read too fast. So are there questions?
Some questions here popping. So from Anurag, he says, can blockchain be used for risk compliance in the development?
Absolutely. My project is called C layer. It's compliance layer. This is absolutely, so if you have a full transparency, then the risk is much better managed, and you can provide a much better, you can have the same compliance, even a much better compliance, with a lower risk and lower cost for everyone. Then second question, so we already have ERP, BI, Microsoft Dynamics, XBRL, and so many other software. How to decide which one should one get certified in for career prospects, as very soon some new products come up? This is a good question. Let me share my view as an IT guy. I don't think you will progress in your career by being certified. You can be better paid by being certified, but you certainly not really by itself improve your career path. If you want to improve your career path, you have to constantly learn. So you have to be ahead of these certifications. You have to constantly learn. So start with whatever you want and still learning all the time. It's a never-ending process. And you have to see it as a process rather than the goal. So you have to keep it learning all the way. And at some point, when you find opportunities in the markets, so maybe you see, oh, this company is offering a lot of money for certifying this or this topic, then it might be worth getting the certification. But certification is just about getting a raise of money, not about progress in your career, because you want also to identify by yourself which product is interesting you and which product in which you believe that you want to invest time. So you have to be knowledgeable of the fields before trying to do a certification. I think it's a danger to just get the certification without trying to understand why and what about is the certification. I don't know if that
Well,
answers.
I've always seen, when I started looking at getting interested in being online, in the 90s, it was really the beginning of the web and everything. And I've always learned around me that the way you learn is basically by checking and trying and doing things and just being curious and just going out there on the system online and that's how I train myself also in my business. Now I'm using a tool that I've completely trained myself on, and it's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of time, but that's how you learned it. And I think always also with IT, it's almost, as you said, that you have to be one step ahead, because whatever thing that you find is already old news almost, whatever program or training. So you have to see, sometimes for big corporate structures, they do want you to have the masters and the certification. You have to see, what you need. But and usually they will say in their job description, we want this type of degree or this type of certificate, because I see a lot of people are asking. I have another question here: what sort of skills you need to learn to start to become a blockchain developer?
So obviously you need to be a developer. That really helps. If you want to do a blockchain developer, start being a developer. Any program, any program language, it's fine. Some are more interesting than other. I can recommend JavaScript. It's always a way to go. It's universal. You might want to go for Python, for Go, for Java. So it doesn't have to be fancy very, very much. You just have to learn to be a developer. And then there are some training to become a blockchain developer, but because they are so rare, because you rather want to have the skilled guy rather than the certified guy. It's exactly the point I mentioned before. Someone that just has a certification but not the curiosity or not the skills, the expertise, has no value. Even more in blockchain, because you're exposed, it's transparent, so you're exposed. So it will be easy to see for the customers and everyone, the competitors also, what you've done. Because it's easy to challenge and see, then it's a PR issues, a public relation issue, a communication marketing issue, to have the correct skill set in the company. So I would say try to be good, try to experiment, try to do stuff. I want to add also something on what you say, Isabel, is that learning is not a linear process. It's not because you learn only the thing of the topic that you'll be very good. Usually you learn much more efficiently by contrast. So obviously you have to spend a lot of time learning the field you are on, but it's also very interesting and very worthy to try to experiment things that have nothing in common with you. So for example, if you do blockchain and you want to be on the blockchain path, my was to do 2 weeks looking at artificial intelligence or looking at big data, because it will give a much bigger relief, much bigger perspectives on the topic you're investing in.
Yeah,
so we have a question as well.
Many development sectors job insist on certifications like Workbank. First check for resume screening is certifications required.
As I just said, they may insist on it, but that's not what you should be driving for. So certification is the consequence of your skill sets, not the driver of your skill sets. Otherwise, you're always behind, and you will always have the low skills jobs. And if you want to have the most interesting jobs, then you should not rely on certification. It might be interesting to have some, but you should not rely on them for your learning and personal career development.
Exactly. And I think, probably you want to test, as you say. And I always tell people to test whenever they want to go for something, whether it's a formal degree or certification, even short certification. Always test it first. You can always, play with the skills, see if you enjoy it. That's why I include in my in my skills assessment to have conversations with professionals. I mean, imagine if someone who wants to get into blockchain has a conversation with you, it's probably so much more valuable, at least at the beginning, when you're even at the deciding stage, when you don't even know 100% that's what you want to do. A lot of people now are talking about it as a career because it's the hot topic, as I was saying earlier. Everyone now says, yeah, the jobs are in technology and blockchain and IT and all these things. So people say, okay, that's what I'm going to do. But then do you like it? Are you going to be happy with it after a couple of years? I mean, there's so many parameters to look at before you jump and just go for the first certification that you see. I think we're talking about also being in competition with those people that are going to be like you, really professional, motivated, and who have done it for so many years. I mean, you created the group back in 2015, and only then now people are talking about it, and now everyone wants to do it. So, so you really have to see what is your, I always tell people, see what is your, you have to decide what is your thing, what is in your DNA, but not necessarily look at what is the thing of the moment, because it might not be your personality.
So I want also to add something about large organization, banks in particular, that requires or insist on certification. They do it because they're not able, they don't have the skill sets in the HR department to correctly evaluate whether or not you're skilled. So they rely on the certification to have a liability that they made a mistakes, you're not good, but they could say, oh, but we checked, you had the certification. There was no way for us to really review it, which is not really a good sign compared to companies who have much more expertise, usually startups or smaller companies, that will evaluate you on your real skill set rather than certification. So if you really want to progress, you might not want to go where certification is that important that they solely rely on it for the recruitments. Another point, which doesn't relate, it's much more, you rather not want to learn alone. It's very important to learn with others. So join groups, join meetups. If you're in this meetup of the career in Switzerland, it means that you're already in this mindset and this mood that you want to evolve around others, because you're much more efficient learning and improving with others. Not only because it's good to have people where you can explain what you understood to really know that you understand things, but also because they will give you insight, they will share what they've done, their experience, and it makes you learn much, much faster in the end. So we have more questions.
From Jisoo.
Yes.
Thank you. Not the class or the course. What would be the best way to gain knowledge on blockchain? I do not have computer science background, but I'm really interested in blockchain.
So I think you should start by having a computer science background. I think, well, it's generic. Even if you're not in blockchain, even if you're not interested in blockchain, I think in our society, writing code is as important as reading and writing English or whatever language. Everyone should be familiar, not to be an expert, but everyone should be familiar with writing codes. I think that's the first step. Then the second step, if you want to involve yourself into blockchain, I recommend investing in Bitcoin, or, well, let's say Bitcoin for now. Don't invest, so only invest what you accepted to lose already. So the problem when you do financial investment is that it can really hurt it can stress you, it can do a lot of bad things. It's expert's job to some extent. So only invest money that you have already accepted to lose. I would recommend you invest the amount of money of equivalent to a meal at a restaurant, this kind of order of magnitude. You might, you will lose it. I can definitely say you will lose it. I'm not a good advisor on investment here. The point is not to win money. The point is to understand by living it, by doing it. The time you having a little bit of Bitcoin, it means it completely changes perspective on Bitcoin. It's not someone else's money. It's not crazy stuff from crazy guys. You're just part of the group. You're part of the community. When you hear Bitcoin in the news, it's part of your project. You're part of it. Like when you have equities in a company, it's maybe not much. If you have like a 50 franc in McDonald's, cool. Well, I don't know what the minimum you can have in McDonald's, but if you have just very low, you're not going to change McDonald's future. But still, you're part of the story. You're writing the story. And I can only recommend to buy a little bit of Bitcoin to start the journey.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I did it, because I thought I don't want to miss that. I mean, if I see that it's something that's evolving, and I thought, well, I want to be part of those. I don't like to be a lagger. I like to be in the front line. That's how I am. So I thought, okay, there's Bitcoin. I have to know how this thing works, and I have to invest a little bit. Of course, as you say, don't go and spend, all your life saving, but small amounts just to see how it works and start to get familiar with the technology. So he's saying here, when you look at the information online, they are simply too much and sometimes conflicting. I find this part a bit confusing. Yeah, there's a lot of information now on blockchain and how to get trained.
So basically, everything is wrong. You have to start with the fact that everything is wrong because everything is written by marketing. Marketing don't understand blockchain. They don't necessarily try to. They try to make content attractive, not content accurate, mostly. So you have to consider that everything is wrong. If you want to start learning information, just do it. Just try to do it. And you will find many conflicting information. And then when you start to doing, you will get familiar the more and more you do it. And the more and more you do it, then the more you learn, and it will be easier for you to identify what's wrong, what's right. And the more it will be obvious for you what is correct. I think that marketing people may have this in the blockchain space. Might have this real trouble because they don't try to do it. They try to communicate about it without doing it. Too many do that, and that's why it's confusing for them and confusing for the readers as well. So just try to do it.
Well, this is a question I would have asked too, just out of curiosity. Can a finance profile get career opportunities in blockchain in Switzerland? Are there jobs in blockchain and that is not developer related and is more functional and operational?
So most of the job in blockchain are finance. Most of the job are finance. But I would say that you should really see blockchain as a triptych. So it's computer science, and I'm an IT guy. I have this bias, and I will orient it as a computer science. But computer science is really, really tiny component. It's mandatory, but it's really, really tiny. You don't have to be proficient in technique, but you have to have a background and understanding of it. The other triptych, the other components is finance. Finance, I think, is one of the biggest one. I would say there is another one which is even bigger, which is sociology or community, or maybe economy in the social dimension of it. Because basically, blockchain is a community of people working together on a same ledger, working together to achieve a result. If you have a small community, then the blockchain is inefficient. If you have a large community, then the blockchain goes much more efficient. The value of Bitcoin somehow is related to the size and the strength and the value of the community itself. It's important to understand the economy and the finance, because mostly it's about tokens, and tokens come with everything that's related to finance. And because it's run on a complex network, it's also interesting to have some background of it. But it's really, you should not address it, oh, I'm a finance guy, I only want finance job. Or I'm a tech guy, I only want tech job. I think with blockchain, you should try to be work on having at least a large base that covers these three domains. And then on top of it, you develop your own specific expertise on which you try to be very, very much better than everyone else.
Well, it's interesting you say this, because we had this conversation with someone in my careerpreneur group, and we were saying how things are going to be in the future. We go less and less in the silo mode, where people now are still talking about, oh, I'm HR, or I'm finance, or I'm such and such. I think now the person who has the potential, or who's the worker of tomorrow, the employee of tomorrow, is really someone who can make the connections and have the networks, but mentally, and understand those connections. So it's not really going to be someone who's just one thing, but there are people who are trained mentally to see the connections, or to make the bridges, basically. So it's a little bit different. I think we're going for a different type of mindset altogether.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we have other question as well.
Anurag is saying, good to know that in Swiss career market skills are more important rather than just certifications. Well, I think in Switzerland, they do want those certifications again, and degrees, especially the big companies. I think in startups, it'll probably be more the experience and the know-how. So you just have to see where you apply and what's needed. I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, you just should not be driven by certification. That was more the point.
So you get a thank you for your valuable inputs. 3 components: computer science, finance, understanding of social and community dynamics.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So I think if people are watching tonight, it's a little bit different than what we see, because it seems like really the main thing that's communicated through the media is more the IT part, almost.
Yes, this is really this really bugs me, because this is really stupid. And the corporate world. So if you look at blockchain, there is something called private blockchain, permission blockchain. If you never heard blockchain, this may be too specific, but basically IBM, Oracle, all those large organizations, they try to sell a product which is called a private blockchain or permission blockchain. So the whole idea of blockchain, as I said initially, is that if you want to modify without authorization, you have to lie or to manipulate every participant. So basically, in a network, average network, you have 10,000 nodes, 10,000 servers and participants. So when I say participant, I can say either users like you, me, and real user, or nodes. I mean, server running the network. Don't distinguish, because everyone can run his own software on his computer that will maintain part of his copy of the ledger. So it's really decentralized and everyone can participate. So if someone wants to cheat, he has to lie to every one of the participants. Every one of the participants. So the real resilience is that you have too many participants you can lie to. It's improbable that you're gonna cheat. There are ways to cheat blockchain, but it's more or less out of reach for humanity. The probability, for example, to find the key of someone else accessing someone else's vault is harder by much more magnitude than finding the right atom in the universe. I think the number of atoms in the universe is like 22 It's a number with 22 digits. The number for the vault is 70 digits. So it's really many more times than finding the right atom in the universe. So it's really unlikely that someone will be able to cheat. But if you're in a private network, a private environment, then you have maybe 5%, which are all large company, and you have all incentive to manipulate, lies, do whatever you do, exactly the same way as you do today. So the private blockchain or blockchain for corporate, this is just technical. This is like database. It's exactly the same as the database. It has no value except it's a database. The funny thing is that one of the promoter of this technology is Oracle, Maybe you're familiar, but Oracle is the biggest by far database provider of all companies. He has different products, and it's mostly database. And IBM is one of the biggest consultant force and corporate products for this large organization. So it's provider of this product for a large organization. So obviously you have this historical corporate provider, technical IT provider, that try to sell new services and that try to provide something that has no use. So if you consider blockchain as a product, as a technical product, you probably miss the fact that if you don't have a community, blockchain has no use. You need the community
that's
to
very
validate everything, which is why I mentioned the biggest things in the triptych is social and community by far. You have, and by consequence, is that you have project which has no IT, who is doing something called ICO, which is like IPO, so you raise money by selling equities or selling things, except you don't have a legal structure. You're just selling tokens, which are relating to nothing, and you raise money just because of the marketing. You make it a cool product, you give the token initially to some friends, influencers, that will say, oh, this project is amazing and everything. Your token will take value. You have a lot of people that will come in join, and then those influencer and the team of the project is going to sell when it's high. So basically it's a Ponzi. You have no product, no tech, nothing, just people doing marketing. And that's also why you mentioned in the question that you have so many wrong things on internet, because marketing have so much incentive to say whatever they want, because subject is new, not mature enough. People are not so much familiar how they should deal with this new field. They buy things which has no value. So really, the core thing is social community, and so you have game mechanics. Even if you're doing a corporate product, you have to think of game mechanics to make your product have the right incentive for the different participants to collaborate and work effectively in this community.
So really now that people know that a little bit more, that it's more about building those communities seriously and so forth, rather than trying to see what's the hot new thing online. How would you do your quality check to decide, because we have so much, I mean, just the coins themselves, I mean, there's so many out there. So how do I know as a normal person who's not at all specialist, what would be some of the steps I can take to ensure that there's some seriousness there?
So I'm going to be not really, I'm going to be maybe harsh, but there's nothing you can do. So due diligence of project. Basically, what are we talking about? We're talking about startups, disruptive markets, and maybe non-professional participants. So imagine that in the traditional world, when you have startups in disruptive markets, you have investors which are professional, expert of the topic, expert of the field, extremely trained analysts that will investigate, talk to the different stakeholder of the project and everything to evaluate the interest to invest early in the company. So it's a real full-time job requiring as much expertise as the expertise required to deliver the project. So forget about it. Now it's also community driven. So what you can do is rely on others' trust to trust others that you know are expert of the fields, have due the due diligence of the project, maybe has stakes in this project, and being driven by those experts that you have identified. Don't get misled. You have a lot of people who know nothing about projects that try to influence. They're paid for that. So they're not really honest, and they have incentive for you to invest in the Ponzi scheme that they're trying to sell. So
well, why joining communities. I mean, we're talking about that. I went to your groups about a couple of years ago and you were a regular, and I met a lot of people there. So I think wouldn't that be a good start, for example, to follow or join a few communities like this and just see what's happening, try to see if people follow their word, etc. Keep up their word.
You start, all journeys start by observing and learning from others. So obviously, if you want to get a fit in the ecosystem and try to learn, and you need to learn by any angle, just go at this event, find people, meet them, and learn from them to start with. So the point I was saying before is about investments. If you want to invest money, be really very cautious about investing in a project, except if you trust really someone that you know is really accurate and honest in the advice he gives you. Otherwise, don't invest. And always invest money that you have already accepted to lose. Don't invest too much because it's very high risk. Maybe it's high reward, but it's also very high risk. And you don't want to put too much money on something that can worth zero tomorrow.
I think I have someone who he says which blockchain is more promising, like Ethereum or NEO, but Ethereum is not is it blockchain or is it the coin?
So the biggest blockchain is Bitcoin, I would say. Bitcoin is not interesting. Let me rephrase it. I don't want anyone to misjudge me. Bitcoin is a very solid project. It's going to stay. But there is not much innovation in Bitcoin itself. By definition, it's meant to be a store value. So like gold in vaults, you don't want your gold to disappear. So Bitcoin is made in that regard. It's made to be stable, reliable in all circumstances. But because of that, it can't really very dynamic and evolve fast, because that introduces risk, and you don't want risk on to store value. You want something safe that stays over time. The second blockchain that exists is Ethereum. So Ethereum it's a very complex project, and there is much more complexity to come. So there is a new version, Ethereum 2, which is in the pipeline. Is not going to be for this year, maybe for 2022, something like that. It's definitely the most interesting project in blockchain space. But there is no truth, or not single truth. And there are other projects as well, like Neo and others, which might be interesting to follow depending on your interest and affinity. But if you want to see what's most promising, look at the community. As I said, blockchain is essentially about community. And by far, Bitcoin community is insane. Ethereum community is the second one by far. If you go on I think I would say that if you're not on the top 10 of the blockchain, then you're too small in terms of community, and it has very, very low chance to do anything in the future.
Yeah, so I think that clarifies.
However, there is something interesting. There is a parallel we can make with internet. So maybe you don't remember internet, but there was a company called AOL, American Online, which became famous with Sandra Bullock and the movie where she was using it. AOL was not internet. Exactly. AOL was not internet. AOL was a network separated from internet, with his own email, with his own search engine, with his own everything. And he was not communicating with the rest of internet. And by definition, if you refer to the meaning, internet, it means if you're only a network, then you're not internet. Internet is what connects the network together. Because long before, there was only US university network. And at some point, someone said, so I think that was DARPA, so the US Military Innovation Agency, that said, oh, let's connect the university together. Let's create the internet. And that's how internet was born. So the same thing can be done with blockchain. Right now we have networks, blockchains, and something that's ongoing. It's how you make interoperability between blockchain. So maybe the future is not about one blockchain, but it's about one network of blockchain all working together with interoperability.
So many options. I mean, we're
many.
creating it as we're speaking. It's still very new, and that's what I find exciting about it, is that it's if you're a creative mind, obviously it's exciting because everything needs to be done still, and there's so much room for ideas and creativity. So and we talked about so much already that that covers it. So I hope that sometimes people watch this video might say, wow, you know, I think I want to know more about it now, and I'm more interested in it, and I see it as a real potential for the future, for sure. Definitely. So you have a group. So to go back to you, actually, you have a group that you created. So I'm just trying to understand this DeFi, I think it's called.
Now we go much further. So I already lost you there. There is even more innovation within the innovation itself.
Okay.
I didn't talk of something yet. I talk of money. We talk of money with Bitcoin. We talk of Ethereum, but we didn't say why Ethereum is so interesting. Ethereum has a concept which is called smart contract. So rather than transferring money in the ledger, so we still have the ledger, but rather than transferring money, instead we sign contract, and we define the contract as software, as a small line of codes that say, oh, we put the money in the contract, and if tomorrow something happens, then the money will either go to me or to you. And it's enforced by the blockchain. So it means that every participant of the blockchain will review, audit, and process the contract we made together. So this is a very a simple use case, but you can think of much more advanced use cases. For example, my project is to have tokens, so money, simple tokens, that you can use for representing financial assets like equities, bonds. So imagine about equities, you have some shares, you have 5 shares in my company, then I give you 5 tokens. And you can use this token. The advantage of the token is that you control it, and you can transfer it to anyone you want. And what I provide in this token is that all the compliance and all the rules that need to be executed for equities transferability, it's already embedded in the token. So it's allow you to ensure that the token will always be compliant, always respect the rules that need to be done at any point in time, but still you have control over it. So now we define money, we define tokens. Imagine now that we can have other services, financial services, loan, lending, like a cash distributor on the street, any kind of financial service that you have and you need. And we code it as smart contracts. So are the rule that the blockchain will execute. That's what decentralized finance is about, DeFi in short. So DeFi is the hottest topic in blockchain. It's really the hottest, absolute hottest blockchain topic in the moment. There is more, the funny thing, there is more Bitcoin on Ethereum, traded every day on Ethereum, than there is Bitcoin traded on Bitcoin itself today. Because you have smart contract which contain Bitcoins and transfer and manage Bitcoins for lendings, for trading, for all kind of complex financial service. So I would not advise you to go directly in that field. First, you need to learn with what blockchain works, how it works, and what it's about. And then when you're familiar and a bit experts, then you can go on this advanced topic. The very interesting thing, for example, that DeFi can do is that it provides, so remember what I said before. I said that we could all together share the money or participate in the financial system with the tiny amount of money we want to provide. Imagine I want to build a home, a house. And I could go to the bank. I will have the condition of the banks. Or we can collectively say, let's not do with the banks. You give me all a little bit of money, and I reward you a little bit less than I will give to the bank. And you will get much more revenue than if you let your bank or invested your bank in the bank products, the product that the bank sells you. Because we don't have the banks, we don't have the cost of the bank, we don't have this intermediary. We do it directly decentralized. You share me a little bit of money, and I reward you much more than you could have as a reward, and it's still less for me than what I would pay to the bank. So decentralized finance is about this kind of services. There's a lot of bugs. It's still very, very immature. It's like Bitcoin 5 years, 6 years, 7 years ago. There is still a lot of issues, a lot of concern. It's quite very complex. Everything I said about investing in startups applies to a scale, to a magnitude order. So it's very a field of experts. But if you're really interested to experiment, learn, and be in the front side of the innovation, then you should be interested by DeFi. By curiosity, is there anyone in the chat that's heard decentralized finance, DeFi, before I mentioned it?
I didn't. It's you. I learned it when I saw. I didn't learn it before.
Basically, I went 3 months ago to a journalist at Le Temps to share with him this information, and we wrote an article about it to introduce the topic. So this is really the very innovative lines right now.
Yeah, so if you want to start a business, you can think basically the businesses of tomorrow, because of course we're thinking about what we can do now, especially after COVID-19, etc. Businesses of tomorrow, really thinking about, okay, how can I innovate in providing services now, maybe doing something different, than what we have now in terms of financing and in terms of loans and all that. So how could I provide services in that area? Maybe that's how I see it. Centralized finance. It's not the traditional. I go to a bank, as you say, I get a loan, or maybe even for consumers.
It's really about community, ecosystem, decentralized economy. It's really about that. Except you have tools that make it efficient, trustable. Because if you without blockchain, I were to take 50 francs of each of you to build my home, you probably have no guarantee that I will ever repay you. I'm not talking about interest. And you will never sue me for losing 50 francs. Doesn't make sense. And the complexity to organize you guys all together to have a lawyer and to sue me and to recover finally the money has mostly no real incentive. But with blockchain, because you can guarantee this trust, you can guarantee this governance, the whole ecosystem, and you can insure. The funny thing, you can also insure the risk, make it very safe and make it very usable for the decentralized economy and ecosystem.
Well, I'm thinking to give people maybe an example, because it just came up now. I was talking to someone earlier about exchange of service. And right now it's very complicated to do, because if I provide a service, you would have to provide the same amount of time, or you would have to provide the same value. It gets complicated. Even if you do it online, at some point I had this idea of exchange of service, and people communicating with each other. But to track this, I know with the time banks or the amounts, it gets very complicated, but maybe something with blockchain could be possible for something like this.
Absolutely. Really, absolutely. You still have a lot of problems to identify the real value of each one is providing. But because you have a decentralized ecosystem with the proper incentivization and game mechanics, it means that you don't need to be only one-to-one. It doesn't need to be one-to-one relation. For example, you could buy your bread at the bakery because you help the children of someone else to learn music, to do a music lessons. And because maybe this person has other needs, which has other needs, which maybe is split across many person. And because of this network effect, then you have a reward, an income from the community, which you can spend with the bakery, because the bakery can then use it for in exchange of other services, which might or not be related to the bakery activity.
This is great. I like the ecosystem idea, and being able to work like this in communities. I really enjoy that idea, which I think covers a little bit, because there was a question from Jisoo who says, do you see the mass adoption of blockchain soon, and there is still hype around it, and it overlooks the true potential behind the technology?
No, I don't think the hype overlooks. The hype is real. The potential is real. We probably don't know everything, but the hype match the potential. I really think. The problem of mass adoption is a huge problem. I think I could resume it as a philosophical questions. Do you believe in mass adoption of freedom? Let me rephrase it maybe further. If you want people to get more freedom or get free, then it's an internal a process. Freedom is an internal process. It's a costly process. When being free, you become responsible. You have to self-manage the problems, the issues, the danger, the risk, everything. So freedom has a huge cost. I'm pretty sure that most of the people doesn't want freedom. They want the benefits of blockchain, but they don't want to pay the cost for freedom. And that's where there's a problem. So if you want to use blockchain in the strict sense of the term, then you become responsible of everything. You're in charge and you're responsible of everything, which make you, so the use case I explained just before about raising money from the community, it means you're responsible in the product or to who you give your money. I may be a scammer, and you have no much way except to really do the due diligence, really analyze what I'm doing and everything, and my background story and everything, like the banks does. And in blockchain, you have to do it yourself. You have to assume and take the responsibility of yourself. If you lose, so usually you use I don't know if I have one there. So you use a small device. So I don't find it. Never mind. So you use small device, so small USB keys, which allow you to sign transactions. So if you lose the USB keys, all the money is gone. So imagine that you have all the money you have, all your economy on a single chip. And if you lose that chip, you lose everything. It means that you need to properly manage the money. The device can be broken, so you have to manage backup of the device with the same level of safety, because if someone get access to the backup, then he can steal the money and do whatever he wants. So being free, being owners of your own freedom has a huge cost. And mass adoption, I think, is blocked by that. People are not ready to be free. So then there's a solution in between. Then you can imagine that there are operators. It's not you can imagine, there are operators that can provide you something similar to the bank accounts, which allow you to trade tokens, to buy and sell tokens, to transfer tokens. They call exchanges. But if you do that, it means the operator can do something. It's called front running. I mean, he knows you need something. He's going to buy it before you do it at a cheaper price, and he's going to resell you at a higher price. And if you accept to lose this freedom, then you mostly back to the traditional game with the banks. But the whole financial system I was criticizing earlier, I think it's related to that. We're so happy that someone else doing the boring stuff for us, doing the accounting, the finance, and everything. we're so happy that someone else doing it that, okay, fine, let's forget the freedom and everything. Let's just pretend we're happy.
But isn't places like N26 or the Revolut, are they trying to be those intermediary, would you say, where they let you do a lot of stuff on your own, on your phone, but it's not completely on your own either?
It's not absolutely not on your own. They're still very interesting players, very important and very interesting players. So what they does is they refresh all the IT, all the processes, all the really 60 years old stuff that bankers don't want to change. Because, in banks, it's all about liability. If you don't do anything, it's fine. If you try to do something and it breaks, you get fired. Do you want to do something? Do you want to take responsibility for something that if you try something, obviously it will break at the beginning. So do you want to be the one that gets fired because you try to improve? So obviously banks have a cultural mindset which prevent change. They try to play with that by having division that do innovation. And the funny thing that's Revolut and 26 and others, innovative banks or innovative financial intermediaries, they're mostly backed by traditional banks.
That's true, yeah.
There's a funny story because it's a way to disrupt, but still doing the bank business. So still making a lot of money, still doing this crazy stuff. And that's why we have, I said we have decentralized finance before. And we have a term for them. It's called centralized finance. And to speak of the whole bank, we talk of traditional finance. So you have DeFi, CeFi, and TraFi for the traditional finance. So we isolate the three different paradigms because
they will have three groups of
exactly.
The ones who choose the traditional, the ones who choose the completely innovative, and the intermediary.
And you have pro and cons in the different approach.
But I know even going to Revolut, because I went to download it and I checked it, I have some positive reviews from friends. Still think that when I tried customer service on Facebook, I didn't get an answer, so I didn't feel very secured. So when you're...
So I'm using both. I have the card on both, and I have advanced use of both. They put a lot of value on support. They really they're quite efficient. So it's more or less the same support that you can have for your mobile provider. So it's quite reliable. You can call them at any time. They have a checklist and check and try to solve your problem. And they commit on that because they know that trust is the number one. It's a bank job. Trust.
But it's a big step for someone. I'm a bit older, maybe. So I've had my whole life the traditional banking, and it's really a step that you go going on your own.
You don't have a physical person anymore. The change that you don't have a physical person anymore, it won't. Oh, madam, feel safe. We will do whatever it takes for us to make you money. Have no problem and everything. Be assured, we're there for you. We will always be there for you. So when it's a human person, then, this guy is cool. This guy is covering me. He's helping me. In reality, is a bit different. But still, you have this human relation. Here, you have the phone call or the chat. Mostly the chat, by the way. So you don't even have the voice.
Yeah.
So it's harder to build the relation. I would say that CeFi is really good for basic finance service. If you want advanced or complex or non-basic one, like just receiving money, transferring money, then not so good. Even cross-border payments, they're not so good because, as I mentioned before with my story of Revolut, those banks rely on the big banks for the international transfer, and those make the law, like UBS blocking me in the middle. And those guys, even if they have interest to disrupt that, to make it better, more efficient, they're stuck with the middle guy, the big guy in the middle. So as long as you're a basic service, paying with your cards, receiving money, transferring money, it's really good experience. And I encourage you to try Ether and 26 Revolut, they're mostly the same same service provided.
But so we have still some time, I think, just starting with the mindset to be completely free, and for people to replying to the question of adoption. If we really want the whole thing as it is, I think most of us are not quite ready yet. So I'm not sure if the younger generation could maybe adopt faster because they haven't known the traditional. Maybe that's also
They're familiar with community. The very strong point with the youngers, they're already familiar from the beginning with community. They're using tools that we don't even know exist, like TikTok, like Reddit, like I don't know. They can't use the social network we use. They don't want to be on the same social network as the parents. Obviously, imagine you as a teenager using Facebook, and that your parents see the friend you have, the chat you having with your friend. This is completely nonsense, completely crazy. So you want to have this Facebook page. Oh yes, I'm doing homework, I'm doing music, I'm doing. Oh yes, I'm a very good son or daughter. Oh yes, and then you use TikTok, use this MySpace, all this. Well, MySpace is already the older generation. The younger, the one will be with the older one, so they don't even use MySpace. They use their own network, and you see that there is always new networks appearing, and the younger always go to these newer networks because this isolates the group from other communities and other which they don't want to be linked with.
Yeah, and maybe there will be some transformation going on with, I think now already I see it with career that younger people want more meaning. They're looking for something else than what we went for when I was graduating, like corporation and big companies. We went for that. I think now young people are saying, wait, what do I want to do? Is it really my thing? And by the way, I have these skills. I'm good at networking. I'm good with computer science. Maybe I'm starting my own group, and that's it. We have trust, and now we all adopted, all the 100 of us, maybe at the beginning, and then you have another person doing the same thing, and maybe in a few generations, that's it. It's all there.
So I think we both have the bias here, Isabelle, but I would not recommend to anyone to create a group or a community. There's so much more value to join, collaborate, build something within an existing community. Basically, this is economic game theory. 1 + 1 = 3 in economy. So the value someone creates isolated, let's say it's worth 1. The value of someone else creating worth 1 individually. And if you put the two together, you create much more interaction and much more value, which creates much more synergy, and the world is much bigger and has more value. So obviously we have a bias because we already have these things, but I would say that you get more value by trying to collaborate and work together, which is basically what we're doing right now.
Exactly. I was
a community, but we create a link between the two to generate even more value. So it's very important to connect yourself with others and to build the project with others. Always think of community others when you're trying to do something.
Yeah, and then you have probably other people. I have other people also who are watching these videos and also have their community. So it's really, that's how it works. You expand and get your community. So you have community, and then you belong to other communities as well, and the bigger ones. So yeah, it's quite fascinating. I think really what I'm getting out of this live now, after an hour and 13 minutes of hearing and hearing all the questions, or viewing all the questions, is that it's almost more about networking and community than it is about tech and more IT.
It's always about the people.
It's about the people. And that really changes my whole perception.
I'm a tech guy who said that.
It really changes my perception. I mean, when I was getting into this live with you, and even I went to your meetings and I talked to a lot of people there, still today, I'm like, wow, I think, before I started, what I thought really about my mind, how it was built. And now after, an hour and 15 minutes and seeing all the questions, And I'm really realizing, well, actually, it's more about networking blockchain than it is about IT. And that's really a big aha moment for me tonight.
The value
So
of
great.
Bitcoin is only the number of people that wants to be joining the community. So the value, the intrinsic value of Bitcoin is really the number of people and the quality of the people and their interaction.
That's amazing. Yeah, I just learned something. I'm very excited.
You take the exact same technology, you run your own Bitcoin network, it will worth zero if you're alone. Because the money which no one wants has no value.
That's amazing what I learned. So I think probably a lot of people in the group will also think differently about the whole thing. Maybe come up with ideas, and maybe I get messages, people starting their own company, or it will inspire for sure. Even the replay will inspire. I get messages usually after the replays. So anything else you wanted to add before we close? Because I am conscious that it's been a while. So
no, I think we went through a lot of topics. It was very, very interesting. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. And I have posted all the links below for people who are interested about our communities and want to learn more about that as well. So it's all there. And of course, you can message us. You're on LinkedIn. I put your profile below. People want to ask you follow-up questions and get to know more about your project. And by the way, congratulations, because I know it's a tough, we were talking about that, it's a tough road, entrepreneurship and starting a project and carrying your project to fruition. So congratulations on that.
So I learned legal, I learned treason, I learned everything, but I signed for it because I knew going on the startup entrepreneur way was going to be hell of a ride.
Yes, for sure. But I always say it's probably the most growth. If you're interested in growth, I've had many jobs, of all kinds, even, very senior roles, but I've never had so much growth than when I went my own way, because really entrepreneurship you will see all kinds of facets about you as a person, about I always say, I resolve a problem each day, basically an issue, something that comes up, that I have to find a solution for, that you never have this even in a job that's fascinating in a company. So because you also have people around you who are specialists and have their responsibilities. But when you have your project, you're an entrepreneur, you always have to resolve all kinds of things all the time. So your mind is never really at rest. So you're always thinking, basically. Which is good. It's good for you, I think.
And you explore, as I say, you explore topics which are not related to your field, and it's make you a much more perspective and much more wisdom from challenging views from other angles.
So Anurag is saying key takeaways from this session is that blockchain can be used in development sector, accountability, tracking, and the three components that make a blockchain. Thanks to Isabel and Cyril. Well, thank you for attending and being active in the chat. Very good questions. So really appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, have a good night, everybody, and talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.